Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we've got another one of those videos where I respond to a Daniele Greene video in regards to the Wheel of Time. Personally, I actually really like doing these videos because it feels like I'm talking with a friend about a series that I'm very excited to read. He gives his perspective from someone that has read the entire series, is on a reread, and knows everything that's going to happen so he can really talk about those things. And I give my perspective from somebody that is doing their first read-through and can use his points to talk about as well. This is the fourth time I've done this video, so I'm sure you already know exactly what you're in store for. Before we continue on any further, I will say that I have got my second channel up and running, my bartending channel, if you're not sure what I'm talking about. I've got a second channel where I'm doing nerdy bartending stuff. Basically, I'm taking like TV shows, movies, video games, books, whatever, and I'm either taking drinks from it or themes from it to create cocktails. Because secretly, I love bartending. It's one of my favorite things in the whole world. But not as much as I love being a big fat nerd. So I've combined both of these passions into a YouTube channel. I'm going to link it down below. I've got my first video coming out next Thursday. It's either going to be a One Piece video or it's going to be a Wheel of Time video. But I've got a few more videos planned, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, some Harry Potter drinks, some Avengers drinks, Star Wars, just that general nerd stuff, Lord of the Rings. So make sure to check out the channel. But let's get straight on to this video. Hey guys, Editing Josh here. I just wanted to clarify something really quickly. I was going to re-film this video because while I'm editing it, I noticed that I just seemed kind of like tired and low energy. So I was going to re-film it because I was worried that people would think I was high during this filming video. But I filmed it really late at night. It was just simply I was tired, and I was going to refilm it today while I've got more energy. But with this kind of video, I like my first reactions coming out. I feel as if they're a lot more honest, and so I decided to keep it the way it is. So enjoy. Let me move across a little, make some room for Daniel.
The Shadow Rising, a book I have noted many times being maybe my favorite, definitely at least one of my favorite Wheel of Time books.
So far on my read-through in the 4 books that I have read so far, I would say that this one has been my favorite so far, because my favorite battle so far with the whole Perrin and the Two Rivers thing, I enjoyed that entire sequence. And I really enjoyed everything to do with learning about the Aiel. So this one really has been my favorite so far. And a lot of people told me that this one and the last one were both really good, and a lot of people really did enjoy these ones.
It feels like when he reached this book, he knew he didn't have to listen to all the safety feedback from publishers who are like, maybe you couldn't get that published, just, reel it in, be more restrained. Now, he's like, I've proven my sales, I know I sell, and you can't stop publishing this series. Let's make it what it wants to be.
Yeah, I'd say I 100% agree. I couldn't agree more. I said the same thing in my review. I said something along the lines of, I could really tell that the author had stepped into his own shoes. I could really feel the author's ability to write increase, and I could feel him really stepping into his own game. And it did exactly feel like he did not need to play the safe game anymore. He had his audience was hungry for more of his stories in the way that he wanted to tell the stories. So he didn't have to write what was safe, he didn't have to write what was popular, he could write exactly what he wanted. And that confidence and passion really did come through on the page.
I would say my biggest criticism would be at times the pacing within The Shadow Rising is a touch slower than I think it needed to be, but other than that, it's one of the strongest entries the series has to offer.
I've noticed with a lot of Wheel of Time books that the pacing has been the biggest issue that I've encountered, which is really great to say, right? With all the issues that you could run into when reading a story, the pacing really isn't the biggest one that you could possibly have an issue with. His characters are great, the world building's great, the action sequences are really engaging, which is great, the foreshadowing is awesome. There are so many other things that could go wrong. So I do agree that the pacing I have noticed across the 4 books that I've read has been really the only downfall that I have encountered, but I've noticed that there's a really clear pattern in the way that Robert Jordan paces his stories. And especially because when I review my books, I try to do a review at 300, a review at 600, and then a review at the end. And in the first 200 pages, the pacing is incredibly slow. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, is there really like nothing going to happen before I hit 300 pages for me to talk about in my like first part of the review? But then between like 200 to 250, something really interesting will happen. And then it will like keep going from there. It'll keep snowballing from there. So I've noticed this like very distinct pattern in these stories that I've read, that in each story, the first 200 pages has been incredibly slow. Then between 200, 250, something interesting happens, and then it snowballs from there. Just a little thing I've noticed.
Robert Jordan's not foreshadowing because he's explicitly telling us, like, it's gonna go down, but it's not explicit. Min has the ability to see the future in a vague way, and she's seeing all these Aes Sedai, like, covered in blood, awful stuff left and right, and she's like, oh, shysters, need to talk to the Amaryllis Seat.
I actually really liked that part where Min sees all of the, like, blood on people's faces, and she's not sure what exactly it means. Like, she knows that, like, all of these people are either going to die or people are going to get injured, and it's, you know, going to be disastrous, but she has no idea as to the timeline in which it's happening. And I did actually really enjoy that part of the story, because it did really give this sense of, like, oh crap, what's happening? Like, this is meant to be, like, one of the biggest power seats in the entire world, and it's about to crumble. And at that moment, there were, like, the White Cloaks outside of the city, and in my mind, I presumed that Padan Fain would be, like, leading some kind of rebellious charge against the White Tower with the White Cloaks. Because we do know the White Cloaks don't like the Aes Sedai. I didn't think that the danger would come from a coup.
And it's because Elida basically decides to throw a little coup, and Swan Sanche is deposed. There's essentially a civil war erupting from the most powerful seat within all the Westlands, and this is another thing that just adds to the continual weakening we're seeing as we know the last battle is on the way.
That moment was so huge for me when, like, the Amaryllian seat gets, like, captured and she gets stilled in that, like, dungeon at the bottom of the White Tower. When she wakes up and, you know, her friend's there, Alina, I believe her name was, and they're like, they wake up in the darkness and they start talking to each other, and they, like, realize that something's missing, and they realize they've been stilled. That was such a huge moment, and I was, like, not expecting it at all, in the least. My, like, prediction is that somehow, using some kind of angriol or whatever, they will eventually learn how to reinstall someone's ability to channel. But, like, obviously I don't know that for sure, and, like, when it happened, I was like, this is so insane. And especially when you find out, what was it? It was either Galad or Gowan. They led the charge to stop the Amaryllian seat from being rescued. Like, they were on the other side. That whole, like, everything that happened with that White Tower as soon as, you know, the Red comes in and, like, takes over, that entire whole thing that happens, I loved it. Loved it's probably not the right word to say. I was on that roller coaster, and I was very much enjoying that roller coaster. It was good, it was bad, it was terrifying, it was, like, heartbreaking, but I loved it.
We have our first, I believe, instance of a bubble of evil. Evil is coming into its little reality and going all over Tyr. This bubble of evil is attracted to Rand, Mat, and Perrin for obvious reasons, and they each have, like, a survival scenario they have to get through.
I thought the bubbles of evil were a great tool for the author to use. I said in a couple of reviews before that one of the really great things about having, like, a Dark Lord or, like, a big bad evil guy that is just a force of pure evil is that as your main characters become stronger and they learn to face, you know, these monsters that were once incredibly terrifying and dangerous, being a big bad evil guy or just a force of darkness, you can just keep coming up with new and more crazy creatures for them to fight. Like, in the beginning, Trollocs were incredibly difficult and incredibly terrifying. Now they'll just, like, go in and just stab a Trolloc willy-nilly. So I do like the bubbles of evil as a form of, like, the Dark One being able to, like, touch the world more, and as a sign that these characters have grown in their power, that the monsters that they've been throwing at them are no longer as terrifying.
And one of my favorite moments of Matt's character is, well, like, everyone's recovering from watching this happen and, like, freaking the hell out. He just starts taking all the money. He's like, is mine. And while the last book definitely is where a lot of fans start loving Matt, this is the book where I think he's solidified as many people's favorite, because he isn't just dumb, bumbling, like, oh, comedic relief. There's so much intelligence to him through his stupidity in this book, and we'll get into that more as we go on, but I love the guy.
See, I gotta disagree there. I don't think that Matt really did anything in this book. Like, I really liked Matt from the moment that he was, like, freed from the dagger and he wakes up in the White Tower. And you, like, learn about his luck and you learn about his gambling and, you know, he, like, fights the waters and he does all that. That was what made me really like Matt and Matt's character, and apparently a lot of people also do discover they like him around that moment. But in this book, I really didn't feel Matt did anything. Like, in this book, it just kind of felt like he was just being, like, dragged behind Rand the whole time. I didn't really feel like there was too much, like, character growth. There was the whole Matt coming to terms with Rand being the dragon. I did really like that. I thought that was great character growth. But besides that, there didn't really feel like he did too much, except for come to terms with Rand being the dragon and, like, hold on to his friendship with Rand. But also, while we're talking about Matt just right now, what's the deal with his, like, fox necklace and his, like, spear? Do these have some kind of, like, magical property that I've yet to find out because I'm only up to book 4? Or is it literally just like a necklace and a spear? Knowing how good of a writer Robert Jordan is, I do expect that it will be more than just a sword or a spear and a necklace. But I'm just really, like, struggling to figure out what it would be.
Perrin, on his way to visit Rand, thinking that he's the one who caused his axe to attack him, arrives and sees him in this condition, and then we have another kind of example of how the power shifting is occurring here. And Moiraine has an interaction where she wants to heal Rand, but he's pushing back, and there's just this different vibe, and it's not Rand being petulant. Well, he definitely still is a bit, as he was before, but there's some kind of authority to the way he's behaving that echoes to a lot of what is to come.
I love the power shift dynamic that happens, and I meant to mention it not only in this book review, but in my last book review. I love how the more that these characters are seeing the world, the less that they're listening to Moiraine, or the more that they are able to, like, stand up to her, the more they're able to say, look, we know you're trying to pull us on a string like a puppet, and we're not here for it. And that, like, power shift does happen a lot more in this book, and it's something that I did really enjoy. But also, not only just like that, the more they learn, the more they stand up to Moiraine kind of thing, but also how much more kingly Rhaen has become, how much more, like, commanding in his presence and in the way he speaks and in the way he deals with people. That is something that I also really enjoyed as well.
We also have a scene I kind of forgot about where Egwene comes in. She's like, Rand, I view you like a brother I used to hang out with. Don't want to be on that vibe anymore. And he's like, same. And then Elaine's like, Rand, hi. Jokes. I'm joking. Obviously, it's not that explicit, but jokes. But I really like the little practice they had of trying to work with him with Saidin and examples of Saidar. And we know how powerful Egwene is for your average channeler at the time. And having Rand just dwarf both of them together was just kind of awesome to me. And of course, it also shows him out of control a little bit. He's struggling.
I did actually really like that part, and I feel as if it was more of like a setup. It was like a low stakes chance for them to show that, like, you know, women can't see men channeling and men can't see women channeling. And the way in which they use the one power is different, because I believe it's also in that moment that they explain that women are better at channeling water and air and men are better at channeling earth and fire. It is a nice little, like, fun exposition moment, but it's also a nice, like, dicey character moment where the girls, like, really, like, fear Rand in that moment, that at any point he could just, like, explode them. And it kind of begs that question for Elaine again, like, are you going to fall in love with this man that is destined to go crazy and is like destined to die on Shao Ghul.
And he comes across a young woman he was unable to save, and he tries to resurrect her with this extraordinary amount of power at his display. And this is an important scene for two reasons. It shows us just how much Rand is not mentally stable as he's forcing this child back to life, trying to anyway, while simultaneously showing us that even someone using one of the most powerful magical items in existence cannot cure death, because Rand fails, and it tears him apart. And Moiraine and Lan, in one of the most dynamic shifting changes to their relationship, are both afraid of Rand, clearly afraid of him in this moment.
That's a really, really great moment in the story. It's not a great moment, it's like a terrible, sad, depressing moment, is when Tyr is under attack and Rand just like executes this big, massive killer lightning storm that only kills the bad guys, and he comes across that dead girl. And that scene is like so powerful and emotional, and like Moiraine is like, Rand, don't, it's forbidden, or like you can't do this or something. But Rand is like, I just have to save her, and he like reaches inside of her and like starts trying to pump her heart or whatever, and her body lifts up but then like collapses back down. That's such an intense scene, but it's like so great. And it does show that like genie magic where like there are certain things that even magic can't do, bringing someone back to life. Which is another nice little like exposition moment like the girls had earlier, but obviously not as low stakes because you're dealing with a dead little girl.
Perrin, hearing of these rumors of the Two Rivers being under attack and, you know, with White Cloaks and all this stuff there, he decides he wants to go. Faile wants to go with him. He's like, no, because he's planning on turning himself in. He doesn't want Faile to try to stop him, so she then tricks Loial into bringing him as well. They end up going into the Ways with three Aiel, Gaul, Bane, and Chiad, who clearly have like an odd dynamic as well. I hated this read-through. Pretty much everything in the Ways from before till after between Perrin and Faile. I know I'm supposed to hate it because it's young adults in love bickering, and it's supposed to be annoying, and it was.
Yeah, I hated that moment. And when he says it's young adults in love, I don't think that's the reason why people hate that moment. I think people hate that moment because she manipulated Loial. And Loial is just a creature of pure love and happiness and greatness, and for her to just like manipulate him as much as she did was just the worst. And then especially with something as like dangerous and deadly as the Ways, for them to just have this like petty little argument going on while they're traveling through the Ways, it was just the worst. I hated it.
And there's this figure, Lord Luke, who's providing advice that on surface level can kind of help, but if you take a deeper look, is certainly not the best options available for these people. So is he an idiot, or is there something more nefarious at play?
On my read-through, I really hoped that Lord Luke wasn't the Dark Friend, or like wasn't Slayer. I really hoped that he was just like a stuffed-up lord. And especially once the Tinkerers got involved, I was hoping that Aram would be Slayer. He would be the Dark Friend, and he led the Trollocs to his own camp to kill all of his own people. And I wanted that because like you did really feel it was too obvious for Lord Luke to be the bad guy. So I was hoping it would be like a subverted expectation and Aram actually be the bad guy. But unfortunately it wasn't.
Some people have said Perrin's reaction, that's it, and then he just seems fine. I would say you're not paying close enough attention, because Perrin goes from this emotional falling apart to very emotionally numb to then on a revenge spree. Because as this progresses and more people kind of fall into Perrin and agree with his logic to bring in all the people, come together, form arms, and try and defend the town, he then goes out and starts aggressively hunting and killing Trollocs. That, to me, was his grieving.
I don't agree with that one. I don't feel as if Perrin was hunting the Trollocs for like revenge. I don't feel as if it was like a revenge hunting. I feel as if it was more like a ploy to get the White Cloaks to leave. I feel as if it was more like the White Cloaks have said that they're here to save the Two Rivers from the Trollocs. We kill all the Trollocs, the White Cloaks have no reason to stay, so they will leave. It didn't really feel to me like part of Perrin's grieving process. It felt more like a plan to remove the White Cloaks from the area and to keep the rest of the village safe. Although I do agree with what he said about Perrin kind of going numb, but I feel as if that was more from Faile's advice, how she said, like, her father said, you can either mourn the dead or lead the living. You can't do both. So it felt like he was given license to not grieve in this story, or like as the author, he didn't have to write Perrin grieving in this story because he had a city to lead in a defense against the Trollocs. That's what it felt like more to me.
There's also some tinkers that have come and been brought into the Two Rivers, and Aram, of course, has now picked up a sword, leaving the way to leave behind, which is a parallel to a lot of what we learn about in the Aiel. Oh, good. Okay, he's now with Perrin and wielding a sword. I did just mention that as well, because I'd get comments if I didn't.
I'm going to tell you the truth. I actually didn't make that connection of, like, Aram leaving the way of the leaf behind to pick up the sword. I didn't make the connection of it being the same with the Aiel and, like, Rand learning about the Aiel's backstory and how they did the same thing or something similar. I didn't actually put that, like, 2 and 2 together. But now that I hear it, it's actually really clever, and I'm glad that it was included.
During all of this, there were also a couple Aes Sedai who were among the Two Rivers who were looking for more girls who could channel to then bring back to the White Tower. They don't play too huge of a role aside from just kind of acting as support for Perrin and occasionally wise voices. I like their presence. They just didn't have as much impact in the plot as I thought they would.
Yeah, to me they were just like typical Aes Sedai. They were mysterious. You didn't really know if you could trust them. You didn't really know what was going on. They had great warders with them. But I thought that the story about coming to the Two Rivers to find girls that could channel, I thought that that story was a cover story. I thought they were up to something more nefarious, like there was something more sinister going on, so to say. I didn't think that their cover story was legitimately they were looking for girls who could channel. I thought it was something like sussy going on.
Also, Abel Cawthon and Tam Althor have been off surviving with these people as well, because of course the White Cloaks want to find and kill them as well, we assume.
I was so glad when we found out that these two hadn't died, especially Tam, because we didn't really know too much about Tam, like if he survived or what was going on with him. So I was really glad that we got to see them. They were doing well, they were alive, they were basically thriving. I really was glad that we got to get that little experience with them.
The final attack on the Two Rivers, probably top 3 battles of the Wheel of Time, and there's this siege where Loyal and Gaul went off to close the way gates that were allowing the Trollocs into the Two Rivers. They succeeded, but by the time they did, and survived with some injury, good on them, there was still already thousands of Trollocs there. So Perrin sends off Fael to try and go get help from Caemlyn, but he knows she won't be able to get back in time, but it's just saving her life. She agrees. If he marries her, he marries her. They're married.
All right, I loved that siege of the Two Rivers part. I thought that that was such a great, fantastically like written moment, and you really do feel the severity of it once all the Trollocs are getting past, and they're like the women are standing there and the women are fighting, and you're just like, this is their like last line of defense. These people are about to get steamrolled, and they're all about to die. And before all that happens, when Perrin sends off Fael, and like the next day or whatever, he's walking around and he is like shoring up all the defenses, or he's like talking to people while they're all at the stations, and he goes to like apologize to the women's circle or something for sending away Fael, who, you know, could have stayed and fought, because it was like unfair for her to go but like all these other women to stay where they just have to die. And the women are just like, look, don't even mention it, like it's not even a deal, like whatever you did, whatever you had to do, and it's fine. And everyone in the town is just like so on board and just forgiving of him sending away, you know, an able-bodied warrior when all the rest of them had to stay behind and die. And I thought that that was just like a really beautiful moment.
And Perrin does not turn himself over to the White Cloaks because they actually didn't help during the fight. So fuck you, White Cloaks.
That bit was really crazy when the White Cloaks didn't come and help. I'm not really sure what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting the White Cloaks just to like stand by and watch it happen, because I thought they would want Perrin alive to like hang or trial or whatever. But obviously, because they thought that Perrin had brought the Trollocs, they were expecting the Trollocs to kill everyone but Perrin, and I guess then they would swoop in, kill the Trollocs, and then capture Perrin. But anyway, I'm really glad that Perrin did not hand himself over, because the White Cloaks didn't help. Because like in this kind of story where like honor and stuff is like a big deal, you would see dumb things happen, like Perrin going, I guess I did make a promise to turn myself over. And even though the White Cloaks didn't help, he's like, my honor is more important than their word, it doesn't matter that they didn't help. So I'm really glad something just like really stupid like that didn't happen. Thank you, Robert Jordan, for writing a great battle scene that ended well and didn't have something ridiculous like that.
Heading back to camp, though, they are attacked by Couladin and his people. Couladin accuses Rand of killing his brother because he has returned before his brother did. And Couladin's like, there's no way you can return. And Rand's like, your brother's not handling it too well in there, by the way. And then Rand unveils his 2 tattoos, and that makes him the official Kara Karn.
I did like that bit where Rand comes out of Rhuidean and he is like ambushed by the Aiel, and that like fight ensues, and the Wise One runs down the hill and says to Rand, like, show your dragon. And so he like lifts up his arm and he shows like a dragon. She's like, no, show both of them. And he shows the other one when like he didn't really know he was meant to do it. But in that moment it's meant to be like, I am he who comes with the dawn. But Couladin's just like, no, he's a fake, I don't believe it. He came out before my brother, he killed my brother, what is going on? And like, as the reader, we're thinking back to the guy that just like scratched his eyes out and was like in the process of killing himself.
Aviendha is being forced to be like Rand's tutor in the Aiel ways, but she hates it and he doesn't like it because they just don't get along and are not best buds.
I ship Rand and Aviendha. I have a feeling they're going to hook up. They're going to leave Elaine behind in the dust, Rand and Aviendha. I like their like, they've got a strong enemies to lover thing going on. I ship it. I dig it. I support it.
Can I just say one thing that does strike me? There needs to be more explicit, outright sex within Wheel of Time. I don't know if this is going to be a weird rant for me to go on, but there's so much nudity, there's so much sexual tension, and there's so many different cultures. To me, it strikes me as a bit odd how much these adults, they are adults at this point, are just letting sexual tension simmer, which if it was a standard medieval Europe kind of fantasy world, I'd be like, okay, fine, but this is not that.
He makes a great point there. Like, there's a lot of things that happen, and I'm like, is that sex? Did these people have sex or not? Where, like, Matt will, when he was in Tyr, I believe it was, he would talk about, like, plump serving girls, and, like, this one would enjoy a good tickle, or this one would enjoy, blah blah, or this one liked a good cuddle or something. And it wasn't stated that they were like banging, but it was like implied that they were, or were they actually just tickling each other, or actually just cuddling? So I do agree with them on that. I would like, to just be like a little bit more like, yeah, they banged. You don't need to give me like a graphic sex scene, but like, it's okay to express that these people did it. Because that's also important for like character development and like character bonds.
But then, when Rand finally arrives at this Aiel gathering place, there is a humongous confrontation, as Couladin pronounces himself the Kara Karn, showing matching tattoos to Rand, and says he saw the histories where the Aiel were great people who he'll take back to... And then Rand steps forward and he's like, hey, you guys are oath breakers, and you used to follow the way of the leaf. That's the real history. And then the clan chiefs are all like, That's true. Couladin, you're a liar. And then a civil war kind of breaks out between the Aiel, as some are loyal to Rand because their clan chiefs are saying he's the right person, and then there's the Shido, who are like going through this propaganda route. And of course, that's the easier way, so some people want to go that way.
So I did like this moment because, right up until this point, Couladin was really talking about, his culture and how these like wetlanders were coming in and they were ruining it and changing things. And how he, like, wanted to keep everything the same way and, like, honor and all that good stuff. But then he, like, does the full 180, 360, however you want to say it. And he gets fake tattoos on his arms. And he, like, expresses that he is these people's most, like, looked forward to leader. And it's just, like, such a shift of his character to go from somebody who is so dedicated to keeping things in the Aiel way and keeping things the way that they were, for him to like dishonor his people so much by pretending to be he who comes with the dawn.
You could make the case that Perrin going back for the Two Rivers is selfish. He needs to stick by Rand, but at the same time, it was the right. He felt it was a right choice for him to make. It was good. He's helping save the people who raised him, so it all mixes up quite well.
I don't think it was selfish for Perrin to go back to the Two Rivers. Like, they're all young men, they've been through a lot of crap, and like, you know, they all know that they're tied to Rand, so even though Perrin has gone his separate way, he will more than likely end up back with Rand. So I don't think it was selfish of him to, you know, one, just be homesick and want to go home and just see where he's from and the people he knows. Two, to run back and try and help the people that are suffering because of him, right? If anything, I feel like it's more of a case to say it would have been selfish of him to not go back to the Two Rivers and let everyone suffer while the White Cloaks dismantle it looking for him. Yeah, that's going to be my official response to that.
I like that Matt is such a better friend as the series is kind of moving through. He's getting over that initial fear and the stories he was told around Rand, and he's becoming more supportive, and their underlying friendship is still strong.
I did like that because from the moment where Rand and Matt are moving together and Matt's still got the dagger and they're like walking along the street and they're like sleeping in bushes and stuff, you know, you did really feel a bond of friendship between them grow or like express itself. And then at the beginning of this story, you know, you did feel Matt holding Rand at arm's distance because of the bubble of evil that popped up. But then by the time this story ends and like Rand has saved Matt's life from when he was hung and, you know, a couple other things happen, by the end of it, when Rand is standing at that canyon and he goes, I am the Kana Khan, and all the Aiel are like booing him, or there's like a whole bunch of like drama going on, Matt moves up to Rand and is like, come on, jump on the horse, let's go, jump on the horse. And instead of just like, you know, backing away from danger himself, he moved up to Rand and was like, look, mate, jump on the horse, let's get out of here. And it did feel like that Matt really valuing their friendship, really looking out for a friend.
The cultural clashes between everyone and the Aiel I find to be a great source of humor and such a strong element to what makes the Wheel of Time the Wheel of Time. Culture is at the heart of the world building always, and it's beautiful.
I did really enjoy the cultural clashes, especially when you learned things like you know, the sister wives and just how different the Aiel handle things in their own country or their own land. And, you know, even just like simple funny things like the maiden's kiss or like the, was it the Gaishan? And like the, you know, the funny stories that revolve themselves around that. But yeah, I feel like I've said it 100 times. I really enjoyed learning all about the Aiel culture and I hope that I can learn a hell of a lot more. Alright, and that's it. That's all of the stuff that I can respond to. Thank you very much, Daniele Greene, for making that video. I do enjoy responding to them. Make sure you guys check out my bar channel. I'll be releasing my first video next Thursday. I've got like Wheel of Time, One Piece, a couple of videos coming up for that bar channel. So make sure you go and subscribe to it. I'd really appreciate that. Like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to this channel. And as always, thank you very much.